Welcome to Behind the Mic with AudioFile magazine, where you always have great suggestions for your next audiobook. I'm Michele Cobb, and we're celebrating AudioFile selections for the best audiobooks of 2024. Today's category is mystery and suspense, one of the most favorite genres for listeners, and I'm joined by narrator Jean Brassard. Before we chat, I'm going to give you the list of our best audiobooks in mystery and suspense. The BRIAR Club by Kate Quinn, read by Saskia Maarleveld. A Nest of Vipers by Harini Nagendra, read by Soneela Nankani. The sequel by Hanff Korelitz, read by Julia Whelan. Shanghai by Joseph Kanon, read by Jonathan Davis. You'll Never Find Me by Allison Brennan, read by Hilary Huber. And, drumroll please, The Grey Wolf by Louise Penny, read by Jean Brassard. Thanks so much for joining us today, Jean, and congratulations.
Hello, Michelle. Thank you for having me on this wonderful segment. And it's wonderful to hear all those great titles. I feel honored to be in such great company.
Well, you're in great company in many ways because you're actually taking over narration of this beloved
Yes.
mystery series and one that people particularly like in audio. So I have to ask, what was it like stepping into this character's shoes and all the voices of Three Pines?
Well, really, I was stepping into two previous wonderful narrators on this series. First one having been Ralph Cosham's, and the second Robert Bathurst's. And so that in itself was quite a setting for me to step into because Louise apparently for a little while had been thinking that perhaps since the Inspector Armand Gamache investigations stem from that very well known and very well loved village called Three Pines in the eastern townships outside of in the Quebec province outside of Montreal, that perhaps a Quebecois might be appropriate at some point. So I don't know how long she's been thinking about that, but that was the setup for me to come into when they did auditions, and I know she talked with Robert at length about this and the direction that she wanted to take. So it was the set was cleared, and then I actually ended up listening to a couple of Ralph's narrations and then the last three of Robert's to really start immersing myself in the world that both Louise and the narrators had created through the writing and through the voicing. So that's sort of like step one in the whole project for me. And it was an interesting challenge because when you take a new book on, there's often like a lot of liberty, is if it's fiction, of course, in taking on and giving voice to all the different characters. And this time around, Louise has a lot of fans, and her fans are very passionate about the books. And in some level, they're very strict, and they have a lot of expectations about who Ruth, who's like one of the favorite characters, is supposed to be sounding like, and this one and that one. And I needed to follow with what both Ralph and Robert had created, and yet add my grain of salt, my flavor to them all. So that's the long answer to your question.
Well, it's lovely to have a little French flavor here, or a
Yes.
Quebec flavor, as it were.
It's
So,
true.
how did your background contribute to the performance?
Well, I was born and raised in Quebec City, and although I did not grow up speaking English at all, very young, I ended up having a scholarship with the Boston Ballet, and I ended up staying in the United States, and I've been living in New York for over 40 years. But when I open Louise's books and I see all, the people in the village and all these characters and the inspectors, it's like I know who these people are. I just, this one, that's my uncle. The way they speak, the way they behave, My niece is this character here, and I just all the places that she talks about, particularly in Three Pines, and I know a lot of people in that region. I have a lot of friends who live there. I've been there many times, so it's like wow, like that's the luck that you get when you get handed something like that, where something's been written basically where you grow up. When I was first being made aware of Louise's books through my sister, I read a little bit and I was like, well, I need to be the one narrating this. And then I saw that there were other people doing it. It's like, okay, well, that's just not going to happen. But then, the stars moved around in the literary heavens, and I was touched again. So I feel, a lot of connections to the characters.
That's so lovely. And you
Yeah.
obviously prepared, by doing a lot of listening to the other
Yeah.
narrators for this particular series. How
Yes.
do you prepare just for a regular audiobook that you're doing? Is it different?
Well, again, let's just focus it on fiction because I prepare very differently if it's, if I'm reading a biography or there's not as much work, if you're doing something that's a memoir or something like that. You don't have to delve as much into preparing for the people that you're about to give voice to. In this case, I had the great joy and to have a lot of time to work on this book. It's not always the case because there was a lot of anticipation. There was because of the change and because of the expectations, and I did a lot of actual samples after having got having been hired for the job. I worked with a wonderful narrator who was my director, Lorelei King, and along with her and our producers at Macmillan and with Louise, I produced samples of different characters in different settings. The inspectors together, the Gamache and his wife Reine Marie together, some of the other characters in the village, so that everybody would be happy with the voices that I was coming up with, which I never had to do before. So that was interesting. But otherwise, I think of a book like a movie, and when I start, I like to go not necessarily chapter by chapter,
Hmm.
but scene by scene. And I'll read the scene with whoever is in that scene, and then I'll close my eyes and I'll review it, and I'll see the scene again, and just sort of like let's start letting myself being infused, I would say, with the energy of the scene, with the place, the location. If it's a scene in a cafe, I want to have all my senses being involved in that place, and then I move on, and I do that a lot, and then I'll think of some characters come easily, and some others sometimes, somebody like a celebrity, an actor will come to my mind as a guideline, and they just pop in my head, and I'll never sound like Judy Dench. I make a lot of efforts, but she might be in she was in my head for one character in The Grey Wolf.
Oh, so your interpretation of Judi Dench then.
Yeah, even it was just like sort of like a a light, a
Hmm.
crystallization, and then it's sort of like I aim in that direction, knowing full well that that's not well. I don't think anybody will say, "Oh, that sounds like Judy Dench," but it's
So your inspiration, as it were.
yeah, it's sort of yeah, little parameters of an image or somebody that I know very well. With the Grey Wolf, it was wonderful indeed to. Think of a lot of people from my family and my friends, and so that was a great resource, and people who are on television as well. So
So this was obviously a very special project and close to your heart.
yeah,
I'll ask you, what did you
yes,
enjoy most about narrating The Grey Wolf?
it's a great story to start with.
Yes.
I mean, of course, I might be a little bit partial. I think well, let's say it's certainly one of Louise's best books. The plot is so tight. It's interesting. It's funny because I know that a lot of Louise's fans are ladies who knit. They're knitters, and I was thinking about that like I was seeing somebody listening in an armchair and knitting while listening to me. I had that image many times. And I thought, Louise is such a great knitter. The fabric that she's to, the whatever the piece of clothing that she's making for us is so tight. It's so perfect. And I think something that she's very strong with as well is I'm reading another book right now, not by her, and the plot is really good. It's very solid, but it's lacking the heart somewhere. And Louise has such a tremendous heart and such a great love for Three Pines and all the characters, and like and she loves food. And I cook food when I'm not doing work and all that stuff. Making food is my favorite thing, so I'm always immersed with all the like the recipes and everything. But so the attention to the combination for me of having great writing, the great plotting, and being able to sculpt the story like that, and and the Grey Wolf really expands on an international level, but she's always so anchored in the care that Gamache, Armand and Reine-Marie and the people that they in the village and everybody, uh, it's always so connected to uh, people's love for each other, whether through family, through work, through community, and all that. And that's at the core of all her work. And it really touches me. And it's such a privilege to have been able to narrate the book for that.
Well, we get that sense of heart, obviously the love of food, and your enthusiasm for the title. They come through beautifully. So, congratulations
Thank you.
on doing a beautiful job in narrating the series and having to fill in some very big shoes.
Indeed. Thank you very much. I very much appreciate it. I'm getting some wonderful recognition, and that's really lovely. I'm very happy about it.
Well, we also appreciate you joining us here today. Thank you.
My great pleasure. Ça fait plaisir.
Oh, wonderful. See, if only my French were even a tiny bit as good as yours.
C'est la vie.
Exactly. We've been talking with Jean Brassard about The Grey Wolf by Louise Penny. And we hope you come back tomorrow for more Best of the Year discussions. Check out our full list of our Best of the Year titles at audiofilemagazine.com. And please be sure to rate us on your favorite podcast app so others can get recommendations about top audiobooks. I'm Michele Cobb. Thanks for listening.
Brilliance Publishing proudly presents today's episode of Behind the Mic.